All right, we are live on Facebook. Hey, out there in Facebook land, if you are just joining us, I'm terribly sorry. I was having some technical difficulties with my computer, and I am so happy that you guys have had a chance to join us tonight. This is the fantabulous Dr. Ian Cyrus. He is joining us today to talk a little bit about Buddhism, spirituality, and acupuncture and how all of these things intertwine together. We don't usually have so many men in a row, and I'm excited because we have another one next week too. There aren't quite that many males in the acupuncture community, and there's even fewer African-American males in the acupuncture community. So Dr. Cyrus, thank you for joining us tonight and dealing with my technical difficulties. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful now that my computer is working. I feel a lot less stressed. A good old liver cheese stagnation, right? All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm just, my bio is kind of long, so I'll just make it short.
Wonderful, now that my computer
just some bullet points about my work history. I'm a former Marine. I am a retired FBI agent.
I think I remember that about you.
And
don't say nothing funny, folks.
Now I'm, in this field of acupuncture and Oriental medicine. To keep it short, I graduated from Tri-State College of Chinese Medicine in New York in 1998. And I completed the doctoral program with Pacific in August of 2018.
We were in the same cohort, weren't we?
Yeah.
I think that's how I discovered you.
That's how I met you. Right.
I was like, look at that. There's a black dude in my class. Y'all don't understand. There's not a lot of us. And I was shocked when I seen his face come across the screen. It was like, holy moly, let me type to him really fast.
But anyway, sometime between 1998 and 2002, I served as president of the American Association of Oriental Medicine. And so I was very much involved in a lot of legislation and stuff like that going on at the time. And so, but, now I'm in private practice, and I've had some academic experience teaching in various schools. Now I'm not, except for one university here in my neighborhood. I'm like a visiting faculty member. And the discussion this evening is about Buddhism and medicine. And to support that, my spiritual activities, I am an ordained Buddhist priest or monk as well in what you would call the Zen tradition. So, I just wanted to help bridge that gap because, early Buddhism had a rich system of healing. And I'd just like to just highlight some of those things. If I can share my my screen here.
You should be able to do that. You should still be co-host.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to leave this in the edit mode to make it easier if anybody else joins, so I can see what's going on. But anyway, that Gwandu Prajna, that's my my Dharma name. When you become a ordained monk or priest, you're given a Dharma name. And Gwandu Prajna simply means fist of liberation. I guess it has to do with my martial arts involvement as well. But at any rate, let's see here if I can get this thing to move around. And here I am in my robes.
Oh my God, that's so awesome.
Yeah. And the discussion, and this is a quote by the Buddha just to kickstart what we're about to talk about here. Looking at the Four Noble Truths as a medical paradigm, the Buddha stated very clearly, I am the great doctor, the great knower, the great physician of defilements, the unsurpassed surgeon for beings pierced by defilements. Now, defilements in this case can mean any form of suffering, and we'll get to that. And the entire paradigm of Buddhism is based on what's known as the Four Noble Truths. And I spelled noble wrong, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, the Four Noble Truths, this is the pillar of Buddhism, is that suffering exists. And when I say suffering exists, I mean that it exists in all of its manifestations, be it physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as the case might be. Remember, what brought the Buddha to his path was the fact that he saw four things outside of his normal mode of living, and one of them was a sick man. He saw a man who was dead. He saw somebody who was aging, and he saw a holy man. Well, and that's what set him on his path. So, you know, the Buddha never really claimed anything more than the fact that he was a healer. Now, if you look at these, what's known as the Four Noble Truths, the first one is dukkha, meaning suffering, right? So isn't that what we as practitioners deal with, is suffering in many forms, be it psycho-emotional or physical. Suffering is suffering. And tanha means craving. Cessation of tanha, or the craving, which causes suffering, is nirodha, and magga is the path. Now, if you really look at that, that is a medical paradigm. You know, you identify a disease, you figure out what's causing it, you figure out how you're going to treat it, and then you apply the treatment. That is a medical paradigm. So the entire foundation of Buddhism is based on this paradigm. So going back to where it says the Eightfold Noble Path, that's the path. The Eightfold Noble Path, and you see there's 8 bullets right there, 8 points. The first one starts with right view, and if you look at it, it progressed all the way to right concentration. Well, that is the path. So if we continue with this, as he described, that path is further defined by what Buddha said in his first discourse when he achieved liberation. Buddha was never really enlightened. There is no such thing in Buddhism. He was liberated from suffering. He found a way to liberate himself from that. And in doing so, he assigned himself actually 4 tasks. And these tasks are destroyed is rebirth for me. That's a big thing in Buddhism about rebirth. And this karmic wheel that we're on that causes suffering is this whole thing about birth, maturation, death, rebirth. And he vowed to get off that karmic wheel, which is what we call samsara in Buddhism. And further, his goal was to accomplish a spiritual life. The third thing is done what it ought to be done, because he saw this as a mandate that he could not escape from. And the fourth thing is that there is no more of this mundane state, meaning, you know, this stuff that we even in this culture do. We get up every day, we go to work, we come home, we sit in front of the TV, and we go to sleep, right? So he was looking at that in some degree. So he even went a little bit further than that about the 4th task, is that suffering is to be fully known. In other words, as practitioners, we have to get our patients or clients to the point where they're in full acceptance of what they're experiencing. They have to surrender to it in some way. That's what he meant by that. So whatever arises is to be fully let go of. Its ceasing is to be beheld, and the way is to be cultivated. The way is what I made reference to earlier, the Eightfold Noble Path, those 8 bullet points. That's the path, and that's what he called the way. As when Buddha was asked what it is that he's teaching, he described it as Dharma, not Buddhism. The Dharma, and while I'm talking about this, let me say this. The term Buddha simply means one who is awake. That's it. The awoken one. But that's everyone. Every one of us has the potential Buddha within, right? So he's saying that say yes to what, I mean, we're in this panic state right now with COVID-19, and everybody is suffering in some way from that. Well, we have to say yes to life as it is, and that's what he meant by that. So if you pay attention to your feelings, you would know that there are certain things that sets you off, right? It causes reactivity. It's like almost like a match, striking a matchbox. And if you really quiet your mind, you can feel that. Well, he's saying that you have to cease reactivity to what is. So with all this stuff going on, you have to find that place in your spirit where you don't react. You cease reactivity. By the way, the term nirvana is thrown about quite a bit. And the term nirvana simply means blowing out. That's essentially what it means. Blowing out of what though? Reactivity. It's a total ceasing of reaction to what is. And then once you are able to fully grasp the meaning behind not reacting to what is, you cultivate the way so that you can have what one theorist called the quintessence of humanhood. In other words, you have to cultivate the way so that you can have a meaningful life. So, and that's all along the continuum of healing. Now, let's look at some of, you know, the healing aspect of Buddhism. We look at Avalokiteshvara, and Avalokiteshvara is also known as Kuan Yin. How many of you have a statue of Kuan Yin in your practice? Well,
Definitely.
Yeah, but this entity's name is actually Avalokiteshvara, meaning Avalokita meaning to look on, and the Kiteshvara meaning basically Lord. Well, this entity is also described as one who looks with compassion upon the earth. And there is some controversy as to whether Kuan Yin was male or female. Sometimes this entity appears in the form of a female, sometimes in the form of a male. And that's very interesting. In other words, Avalokiteshvara was androgynous. You know, imagine that in that period of time, right? But anyway, Avalokiteshvara was a bodhisattva, meaning a Buddha to be. And a bodhisattva is one who straddles both realms. You know, they may die in this world, and they're right on the threshold of making that final step into sunyata, or the void, and decide to stick around in whatever form they choose to benefit mankind. So their vow is to bring all of mankind to, if you want to call it that, enlightenment before they can move on. So they have taken an awesome responsibility on themselves. So if you look at, this is a depiction of Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin, okay? And if you look at this carefully, you would see that Kuan Yin has, I think this is better shown in another slide I have. Kuan Yin is often depicted with a lot of arms and a lot of eyes. If you look at the top of his head, he's got a lot of eyes and arms. That means he's everywhere at once, helping everyone. That's the idea, okay? So another important entity is Vaisajya Guru, right? And there is some, Vaisajya Guru is one of those entities that we're not sure historically if it was also Kuan Yin. because the Buddha had many aspects of himself, right? So maybe metaphorically, Avalokitesvara, Kuan Yin, Vaishajya Guru are all the same person with a different agenda. You know, personally, I just think it's metaphoric in a sense. But if you look at this entity I just mentioned, this is what he looks like. He looks like dark blue, and there's a lot to this slide here, but I won't go too much into it. To say, look at his right hand, and you would see a plant, right? And look at the left hand, you would see something that looks like a bowl. That in that bowl is an herbal formula that we have yet to know what it is. But in his right hand, between the thumb and index finger, is a plant, and that plant has a lot of healing properties. So this is an indication that this entity, the medicine Buddha, and that's what he's often called, used the flora and fauna as a healing modality. That's really what that's about, okay? We'll get into what that plant is a little bit. Okay, so like I said, you know, Vaisajya Guru, also known as Raja, king, and there's different names for him, but it's interesting that his other name could be translated as Tathagata. It's interesting that if you look at the Buddhist scriptures, you will constantly hear Buddha refer to himself as the Tathagata, meaning one that's come. So he, depending on his role, there were these other entities of his personality that's out there. Okay, so you know, to me, that's a very interesting thing that this one person can have so many roles. But anyway, Sajja Guru wearing 3 Buddhist robes of a Buddhist monk, holding a lapis colored jar. Now his body is also lapis colored, and that color is metaphorically associated with healing, the dark blue color. Okay, if you look at the 7 chakras at some level, that's what it is. That's when you transcend the earth's plane and you in this healing realm, you know, usually from the neck up, right? So at any rate, but we'll get to the plant in a little bit, okay? Then we have this entity, his name is Jivaka. Jivaka actually existed. He was the Buddha's personal physician. And he left behind actually a very rich legacy of Tibetan, you know, which the Tibetan Buddhists really developed to a high degree. And he was known to be doing things like brain surgery and removing diseased organs and what have you, and using herbs and other substances as anesthesia. And we know someone like that in our profession, right? You guys know who that is? Huato, right?
Huato Daji.
Yeah, Huato was the one who did that. He was doing surgery. But anyway, just imagine 3,000 years ago, somebody doing surgery, right? But anyway, he left behind a rich tradition of this, particularly in the area of pediatric medicine. Exactly.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I knew about the surgery. You've seen surgeries in places like Kemet in Egypt and throughout the first through 6 cataracts, but I did not know that he left behind a knowledge of pediatric.
Exactly. But anyway, yeah, but he was very skilled at pediatric surgery and and pediatric medicine, and he left behind a tremendous amount of material that have yet to be translated into English. Okay. So he was an important figure in Buddha's life because he kept him alive. You know, the Buddha died around 80, and he kept him alive up until that point. The Buddha died, he was actually poisoned by some bad mushrooms or something like that, and that's what took him out. But anyway, anyway, Jivaka was an important figure, and his lineage can be traced all the way back to Shaolin. And those of us who hear about Shaolin, that temple where martial arts originated, supposedly. A lot of the formulas we use these days, particularly in the area of hit medicine, like the Dajao and Zengu Sui and these formulas, were all developed at Shaolin as a form of hit medicine. So, and I'm talking about internal as far and as well as external injuries. So, uh, it's important to note that there's a rich tradition of medicine that came out of the Buddhist experience. But anyway, this is a caricature of Jivaka. And if you look, like I said, if you looked in his right hand between the thumb and index finger, there was a plant. And this was the plant. The plant increases the force of contractions and cardiac output without altering the heart rate. That's pretty amazing. The benefits of this plant is for the skin and also treats post-digestive issues as well. It was effective for healing wounds and treats wounds quickly, indicated by the increased rates of contraction and decreased periods of epithelialization. Okay, so for skin problems, heart problems, it's interesting that there's the Buddha holding that plant. Okay, so here's what the plant actually looks like. It's a fruit that could be eaten. You can eat the fruit, but the fruit can also be dried and used as a dye because it's also an astringent. So it's interesting that particular plant became a central feature in depictions of Avalokitesvara and Vaisajya Guru.
I'm sorry, Dr. Cyrus, what is the English and the pinyin for that name? As we have a couple of acupuncture students and lay people who are not familiar.
Which name? You mean the plant? I don't know.
English and pinyin.
I did. I did look it up, but the name for the plant is Myrobalan.
Okay.
Okay. It's also that's the plant that he's holding.
I will be sure.
As far as the pinyin, yeah, I don't know if this plant is in Materia Medica. I don't think so.
Good to know. All right, Myrobalan.
Okay, so in Mahayana Buddhism, meaning the Great Wheel Buddhism, relates to Avalokitesvara as the sixth sage mantra, and you all know this mantra, right? Om Mani Padme Hum, right? Mm-hmm. Who hasn't heard that? Well, that mantra is related to Kuan Yin or Avalokitesvara. Okay, and let me say a word about mantras. The term man means mind in Sanskrit, and tra, vehicle. So we chant or use these mantra as a way of increasing our vibratory qualities. Now, you may not understand what Om Mani Padme Hum means. It really doesn't make any difference that you understand it. But if you were to chant this, because this particular chant has a high vibratory quality, it benefits you without even knowing exactly what it means. Okay, so that's important to know that. And the last slide I have here is Avalokitesvara prayer, and by saying this prayer even on a morning before you start practice, it will help you it will help to organize your energy in such a way that you express compassion towards your clients. Now, let me say that the Buddha himself was a very accomplished healer. I mean, he did a lot of the same things that the Christ did. Heal the sick. He did all that stuff. He was able to buy and trilocate, be in 2 or 3 places at once. because this guy had a high spiritual development. He was able to transform at times in things in the material world. Like, you know, he fed the multitude, he did all of that. Jesus wasn't the only one who did that. It's just that, you know, when people look at the practice of Buddhism, they don't think of the Buddha as being capable of those types of things, but he is. I have an entire PowerPoint that I did some time ago on that very same thing. And it's very interesting. All right.
You will have to come back and share that with us one day.
Yeah, it's a pretty extensive one though. But anyway, it's about 8:32 right now on my end. So we have a half hour left. So I'm just gonna stop talking, and if anybody has any questions about the relationship between Buddhism and medicine, I'd be happy to answer it.
Well, hey, Facebook land, as I don't think anybody joined us in the waiting room. Gosh, I hope nobody's just sitting in the waiting room waiting for us. Hold on, just checking. Nope. Okay, good. Hey, Facebook land, if you have some questions for Dr. Cyrus, now would be the time. I will interject a few things that people might be interested in. I know some folks are interested in the Bagua and how that relates to Tai Chi and internal martial arts, Qigong. I do know that people had some questions about how internal martial arts and Qigong affect health, particularly in terms of helping to reduce stress, because that's always my big favorite one, reducing stress. You have any words of wisdom while I'm waiting for the questions to come in?
The Bagua, you know, there's a martial art called Bagua Zhang. And then, of course, you have the style of Tai Chi that I practice is the Chen Tai Chi Chuan, which is pretty much the original system that everybody else can, you know, sort of come from. So the Yang style is called the Yang style of Tai Chi Chuan. That's 99% of the people out there practicing that style. The original style is the Chen form, and that form, the postures also have healing applications. You know, the founder of Tai Chi Chuan was a doctor himself. All right, so he would prescribe certain postures, and the most important posture that he would prescribe is the Zhuanzhang, or what's known as standing pole. By maintaining standing pole, you're able to balance all of the channels. And it's a tough one to hold. And it's basically standing with your feet a little more than shoulder width apart, and you know, you're holding your hand in this, like you're hugging a tree. But there is a lot of
holding ball.
Holding the ball. There is a lot of internal requirements that you have to observe while holding this posture. You're just not standing there mindlessly doing it. There's a lot going on. And that's what makes it internal, because there's that internal focus of moving the chi through, say, the microcosmic orbit and then the macrocosmic orbit, and moving the chi through each channel. You know, it could become quite complicated, you know. So that's what makes these arts internal as opposed to external. There's this emphasis on the internal, as you know, how should I put it, the internal aspects of any posture. Again, also I have a PowerPoint about that, but it's mostly about meditation.
Y'all, Dr. Cyrus is going to be back. He's stiffing us on points, and we gonna see him again. So people did come in. People definitely want to know more about the Bagua. And
the Bagua, in terms of its application in medicine, has any of you ever studied under Dr. Richard Tan?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how that works, right? I mean,
well, I do, but you can't assume that our viewers know what you're talking about. Like I said,
but at any rate, but the Bagua, when used properly, you can assign all of the various channels to the trigrams or the guas, and how they interrelate And out of that grows a lot of treatment potential and strategies. I mean, it's a complicated thing to sort of like get. When he first started out, I started training with this guy, and he had a profound influence on the way I practice. Um, so, but what he learned from a practitioner known as Chao Chen. And Chao Chen, who I believe still is alive and practices in New York, was the one who created what he calls Bagua acupuncture. It wasn't Richard Tan. Richard Tan just kind of like took it and popularized it, but the system was actually devised by Dr. Chao Chen and his son. So if you want to look up Chao Chen, you will really see some interesting literature and stuff that he's doing. Okay.
That is awesome and amazing. Okay. One of the other questions that came up is from Jennifer, and she said, how did you decide to become an acupuncturist? Because let's just be real. You have like one impressive resume. You were a Marine, and then you were in the FBI. And so what led you to becoming an acupuncturist?
Well, you know, I grew up in Trinidad. I'm of Trinidadian descent, or what you would call Afro-West Indian, okay? And I had a grandmother, great grandmother, who our home was, that's who raised me. Our home was like the center of the village, you know, from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. It was like Grand Central Station, because she was like the village psychologist, the village midwife, the village doctor, the village this, the village that. So everybody came to our house, and it was a busy place. And she would say, Ian, I want you to go get this herb, that herb, this herb, that herb, and bring it here and put it in this pot and do this. And, you know, I mean, I just did it because that was part of my life. And I really never gave it much thought, really, until after I had left the Marine Corps. And then I started studying under various practitioners of the art. Back then, there was no licensing anywhere. So I started studying under a well-known Japanese master, and he's back in Japan now. But so my first exposure to this was under, you know, the Japanese system. The interesting thing with that is, you know, I became an FBI agent with all of that going on, you know. So I remember being at the FBI Academy, and at the end of a rough day of training, there was a line outside my dorm room with me treating my fellow agents with acupuncture. And
that's cool.
And what the, you know, because I'm from the islands and with this strange accent and what have you, they had a nickname for me. I didn't really take it as anything racist. They would call me Voodoo, because I'm sticking needles in people. Here I am sticking needles in people, right? Well, you know, after 10 years of the FBI and being burnt out from that job, I decided, look, it's time for me to do something that basically heal myself. And then I ended up going to school at Tri-State, and then subsequently at Pacific. So that's kind of how I got into it. And before anybody asks the question, my focus is the treatment of myofascial pain and dysfunction. In other words, sort of like an orthopedic approach to this medicine. That's how I do it. Because, you know, when I was in undergraduate school at Temple University, my undergraduate program was in sports medicine. So, you know, it was natural for me to move in that direction, even with acupuncture.
It was awesome and amazing. Thank you so very kindly for sharing. We have another question. Well, we have a comment real fast. This comes from Jennifer. She says, I'm half Caribbean. You're the first West Indian acupuncturist I've ever seen or met, and I am so delighted. I am glad that Jennifer is here for like almost every show. I'm not sure she's ever missed one. So she's always kind of coming up here and paying attention and asking questions, and I love having her here. And then we have another question from Yao, and he says, says, could you talk about the 5 elements in Buddhism?
I'm going to stop sharing for the time being. We don't have the 5 elements in Buddhism. We have the 4 elements. And the 4 elements are what's known as aggregates. In other words, the material world is made up of these aggregates and an interaction of these elements. But the interesting thing about it is these 4 elements dissolves. And, if I'm looking at this table I'm sitting at right now, basically the idea it's made up of elements. It's made up of, wood and, moisture and all of that stuff. It's made up of something. Well, if you really look at it from a quantum physical point of view, really this table doesn't exist. Because at the subatomic level, all we're basically experiencing is space. What allows us to experience the solid world is because these 4 or 5 elements dissolves, and our brain patterns this in such a way, it collapses that energy so that we're able to experience the substantive world, the world in which we can touch and feel, but it doesn't exist really. I mean, we say that we talk about impermanence in Buddhism, but that's exactly what we mean by impermanence, is that, yeah, it's here, but it really isn't here kind of feeling.
Quantum
because,
physics
I mean, we know
yeah.
that in Oriental medicine, the 5 elements is a little bit more dynamic than that. We have the controlling cycle, we have the generation cycle, and how these things interact with each other. Yes, but it's the way we look at it in the Buddhist tradition is very different.
I'm not as familiar with the Buddhist tradition, but I'm definitely a fan of physics. And anyone who wants to get into the study of physics, it will help you to understand what's happening with acupuncture and internal qigong and visualization quite a bit. It is a really
physics
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean,
line of study.
If you look, I mean, there was one particular sutra known as the Prajna Paramita, where the Buddha talks about, form and no form, right? And how and why we experience that. I would imagine that given his level of development, he would have insight into what that means. And he talks about no ears, no nose, no mouth, no taste, no cognition, no this, no that. No. It all collapses into what he calls the void. And that's the sunyata, the void. That's in the Heart Sutra, by the way, if you've ever heard of the Heart Sutra.
Somewhat familiar.
Yeah.
Again, like I lean on the physics.
But emptiness, but I try to take the Dharma or the Buddhist teachings and see how it correlates with known physical laws, when we talk about quantum physics, to see how it correlates with those things, and every bit of it does. I mean, I don't see any discrepancy there at all.
That is the fascinating thing about this medicine and about a variety of spiritualities. Things that we think are not possible are readily explainable when you start looking at things like physics. And so my favorite experiments with physics is the observer experiment, that matter changes. There is an observer in the room. People are like, that's hocus pocus. It's like, no, y'all, this is science fact. This is how this works. And so listening to you is like, it's been a great reminder of, how we have the capacity as that observer within the universe to elicit change, not only within the observable realm around us, but also with that observation within the body, that internal medicine, that Bagua, that Qigong, and being able to create a change within yourself. And that's why things like holding the ball or dragon stance or horse stance or whatever discipline you come from, and internalized martial arts are so wonderful and so powerful. Let's see, I'm trying to check and see if I'm missing any other questions.
Because we do practice a form of energetic medicine, regardless of what patients walk in and they say, hey, I have a headache, I have low back pain, I have this, I have that. What they don't realize is that all of that really amounts to an imbalance in the body's energetic system. And that's really what it is, you know, and we frame that as a pattern of disharmony. And exactly what does that mean, right? What does spleen chi deficiency mean? You know, my stomach hurts. you know, so we as practitioners, we straddle that fence between this collapsing of energy systems and the material world. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting place to be.
It is. I love this medicine. It's one of the greatest magic tricks, so to speak, on earth. Be able to manipulate energy within someone else's body, regardless of what they believe. Like, I don't need you to believe. This is all science, right? All right. A couple of comments have come in. Yao has said that I'm reminded of the book and film by Sam Greenlee, The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
That's me.
Hearing of Dr. Cyrus's experiences. Check the film out. Yep, totally. And then Jennifer says, this is so fascinating. Lama Rod Owens taught me about that particular powerful Heart Sutra last winter at a Buddhist gathering here in Boston. So yay for being able to interact with our host. Guys, we got about 12 minutes left in the show. So if you have any more questions for Dr. Cyrus, come on and pile them on in. You guys ain't in here in the Zoom room, so I can't bring you on here in Facebook Live. But while we're waiting on more questions and more comments to come in, I'm going to ask a question that I frequently ask. Do you have a favorite acupuncture point? I love for folks who are watching to take something away that they can do themselves. You are welcome, Mama. I am determined to keep these up as long as my chi will hold out. Let me tell you, your girl do get tired. Never having a whole Sunday to myself. It's my downtime, darn it. So do you have a favorite point or a favorite acupressure place or a favorite thing? Even if you wanted to show us a little bagua, a little tai chi.
Well, you know what? I have actually a couple of acupuncture points that
Share.
So one of them is Lingu.
Yeah, show us. Come on, put your hand up. You can't just say Lingu. You're assuming that everybody knows what you're talking about.
Lingu is right at the junction between the two metacarpal bones, and it's just lower than it's just lower than Hugu, which is large intestine 4, right? Just below that. Mm-hmm. And that point will pretty much regulate pain anywhere in the body, because the term Lingu means spirit bone. Okay, that means pain that appears and disappears anywhere in the body, you can use that point. So,
so for those at home, you can rub through here, right? This is large intestine 4, and down here is Lingu. Right, this whole area right here is very active for treating a variety of things, including back pain, womb pain, and several others. So these are the points that he's talking about here and here.
Yeah, it's the big pain point, of course, right? So
yes,
stomach 36 is another one of my favorite points, and there's so much research done on that point in terms of Yes, the latest research.
Stomach 36. When we say that's the kitchen sink point, it's like the point of 100 diseases. That's stomach 36. And while you talk about it, I'm going to go get my acupuncture man, because I don't think anyone's really brought stomach 36 up on the show, and I want people to be able to see it. So excuse me while I cut my camera off for a second.
Okay.
Keep talking. We can hear you.
But anyway, stomach 36 is one of my favorite points. I use it for a ton of stuff, usually with electroacupuncture.
Yes.
Yeah. I use it. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
So, the way that you would find stomach 36, obviously this is not going to be to scale, and excuse the fact that my dude is naked, right? Is you would take 4 fingers and put it right under the kneecap. And where that 4th finger would lie, if it were on the scale here, it would lie right on the outside of the tibia bone, just to scooch over from the tibia bone after that 4th finger would land. And that point is the kitchen sink point. That is the everything point. Headache, depression, diabetes, boosting up your immune system, boosting up red blood cell production, working with anxiety, insomnia, like whatever you got, you throw a stomach 36 in there.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dr. Sai.
the most interesting use of it is to preserve the telomeres.
Yes. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So that has to do with biological. In other words, it slows biological aging. Right? It's an anti-aging point.
It is an anti-aging point when we're talking about the shortening of the telomeres, particularly when we're dealing with things like racial battle fatigue and post-traumatic slave syndrome and how the epigenetic changes that are happening inside of the body. This is what we're talking about, the shortening of the telomeres, which are the end caps on the DNA. And so stimulating this point is a way of stopping and slowing that process.
Exactly.
Yeah, Moxa, stomach 36 Moxa, yes, hot stones, magnets. Not everybody can e-stem themselves, but with e-stem, they have found that putting multiple points, multiple acupuncture pins in stomach 36 and stimulating it with a low frequency has been found to be incredibly effective.
That is exactly how I do it. I have like stomach 36 and stomach 36A. So 2 points, and I use microcurrent at about 30 hertz subthreshold. That's pretty much how I do it.
That is one of my favorites. That is definitely one of my favorite points to be able to do. Okay,
well,
you got it for us? Or favorite client stories?
Oh my God.
So many, right?
I had a
You've been practicing for a while.
Yeah, 22 years. I had a client, this young attorney, came to me. You know, this happened about 3 or 4 years ago. He came to me with low back pain, and I took his pulse, and I'm not a big fan, I got to admit, of pulse diagnosis. Right? I mean, I do it, but
yeah, it's one of my personal weak spots. I'm like, I know it's important, but I don't need it. That's what I say.
And I have never felt a kidney pulse like his before. It literally planted an image of a tumor in my head.
Whoa.
So I told him, I said, you know what? After the second visit, I says, look, go back to your doctor and have a kidney function test done. The following week, he ended up having surgery. There was a tumor the size of an orange on his kidneys.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I mean, literally, as soon as I touched the kidney pulse, I had this image in my head of a mass, a tumor. So, and that's what guided me. And I told him, I says, look, go back and get this test done and this done. And he ended up removing it. It was a benign tumor, but he had a mass the size of an orange on his kidneys.
Man, what did that pulse quality feel like? I am just so curious.
I know, it's like, it's hard to explain. I mean, it's not so much what it felt like, and it's that when I touched it, it's the image that.
It's just the image, yeah.
Yeah, the image that went to my head. It was very intuitive, and I'm not into hocus pocus stuff by any stretch. You know, I consider myself a pretty normal guy in terms of stuff like that. But that I don't think I've ever had an experience like that. Literally, I mean, it's instant I touched him. It was like, yeah.
That is cool. And that is definitely something that develops as you're an acupuncturist. You definitely develop your intuitive side when it comes to dealing with your patients.
Oh, yeah.
I have some accidental things with this medicine. One of my favorite accidental things was discovering that shin bone, that very front tibia bone right there, is marvelous for asthma and chest tightness. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Turns out the imaging is the same imaging
as the same imaging
right here.
Yes.
Same imaging.
So you're a fan of Dr.
So I know
you're a fan of Master
I love tan. Tongue, tan, distal needling, like it is my first line of defense. We're going to start with some tan and some tongue, and then if I can't fix it, we'll get local. All right. But that's where I go and I pick out all my points and I press them on the body like here. I found it. Aha. Asha, right? So that's the one. You found it. All right. Cool. So I am looking Facebook land. We're counting down on time, and I want to make sure that we get all the questions all the questions answered. In case anybody out there in Facebook land is not an acupuncture person, when we're talking about the pulse in traditional Chinese medicine, you have, yes, so not an LIC, but pulse and tongue assessment is in the intake. Pulse and tongue assessment are in the intake, but I assure you, if you come up to me and you say, I have a headache right here and it gets worse when I'm stressed, overthinking, or tired, I don't really care what your tongue or pulse looks like. You've already confirmed the diagnosis. I do not need to see your tongue or your pulse to know that you have a gallbladder headache.
Exactly.
That's just kind of how it is. And that is one of the things that Dr. Tan and Richard Tung, did I say that right? Tan and Tung talked about quite, I'm tired, y'all, it's been a long day. That's one of the things that they talked about. It's just like, you know, you don't always have to prove things with tongue and pulse. If you are certain of your diagnosis, what pulse and tongue diagnosis does is it confirms your diagnosis, and it will give you things to look at in case you're not certain or you feel like you're overlooking things. And so your pulse, you have 6 pulses. You have one here, here, and here on both hands, right? And you have a couple of different pulses. Right hand, this is your lung, your spleen, and your kidney. And on your left hand, this is your heart, your liver, and your kidney, right? So you have 2 different kidney pulses. You have a yin and a yang kidney pulse. And depending on the depth and the strength of those pulses, that's where we come in, and we're holding your pulse for a little bit. We're trying to see a little bit more about how your internal constitution is working, and also in addition with whatever current ailment that you might be going through. All of those things come up in your pulse. And on your tongue, I'm not sticking mine out because we can ask to see Dr. Cyrus's tongue. Your tongue does the same thing. It tells us about your constitution, who, you know, what your makeup is, what your long-term makeup is. And then the coding tells us quite a bit about what's happening right now. So these things are to confirm diagnosis. And there are people who don't ask questions. They just feel your pulse and they just look at your tongue. Both styles are correct. There is no right or wrong when it comes to acupuncture and traditional East Asian medicine. It's if you're getting the correct results and your patient is getting better, then those are the things that matter. All right. Moving along. I don't see any more questions. Lately I've been pulsing the vagus nerve. I'm a little confused now. Are you telling me that you're taking your pulse in your neck, your ear? Because your vagus nerve is a big old nerve. It extends from your brain and throughout your diaphragm. I'm not sure where you're taking that pulse at, but the vagus nerve is the thing that is tripped when you're talking about Buddhism and spiritual practices. When you're doing that internal martial arts, you're utilizing that vagus nerve in order to elicit the changes in the body. The vagus nerve can also be compared to the Chong in traditional Chinese medicine, the CHONG, and that is the connection between the heart and the kidneys in traditional Chinese medicine. So when you're doing those internal martial arts and you're doing the Qigong and you're doing the Bagua and you're holding the bowl and you're doing all those visualizations and lining up your chakras, right? And all that good stuff. We have language for that in traditional Chinese medicine, and that is the Chong. Questions are coming in. Have either of you ever done a 7 dragons treatment? Have you done a 7 dragon treatment?
No.
No. I'm not, we might call it something else. There are a lot of things that have a multitude of names depending on what your training is, Jennifer. We have not done a 7 dragons treatment. There are things like the aggressive energy treatment. There are things like the 13 ghost points. Not really sure what you're calling 7 dragons treatment. And that could be a 5 element thing. That's a style thing. So in terms of acupuncture, you have like Korean acupuncture, Japanese acupuncture, distal needling acupuncture, sports medicine acupuncture. You have belly acupuncture, auricular acupuncture. You have 8-channel theory acupuncture. Like there's a lot of acupuncture out there, and you'll never like there's a lot. All right. I'm just trying to wait to see if Yao or Jennifer or Aaliyah have any more questions coming in, because there's a delay on Facebook. It's like a 30-second on Facebook, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting all the questions answered. And we have like a huge surround the dragons, maybe? Okay, maybe. Is that what you meant, Jennifer? Did you mean surround the dragons? She says, yes, it's a 5-element acupuncture thing. I am not a 5-element acupuncturist. I'm an 8-channel theory acupuncturist. Yeah, are we talking inner and outer dragons, Jennifer? I want to make sure that
Yeah,
we
that
do
is
get,
a 5-element thing.
that's totally a 5-element thing. And not everybody does 5-element style. Not because there's anything wrong with it, just not everybody does it. You know, it's like cooking. You might be really good at Italian cooking. And just because you're good at cooking Italian pasta doesn't mean you're going to be good at cooking Asian pasta.
That's right. Yeah, that's a 5-element thing.
There's definitely surrounding the dragon, which is the technique where you're putting needles around an affected area. Window of the sky treatment points. Okay, so window of the sky treatment points is not something that I use on purpose. Like I might use baroreceptor points. Most of the window of the sky points are baroreceptor points, and I might use them, but not in terms of spirituality. Like if I'm using window of the sky points, I'm probably treating neck pain or trying to get your blood pressure to go down. How about you, Dr. Cyrus?
I use them in a way that sometimes I might use a bunch of them, like large intestine 18, stomach 9, you know, those points. Sometimes with patients who have this feeling of lack of connection with their bodies, you know, that kind of thing. This kind of disassociative kind of feeling in their bodies. And a lot of that is related to the SCM, by the way.
Yeah. Neck tightness, your sternocleidomastoid. Again, these are what we call baroreceptor points. Most of them are around your neck.
Around the neck. Right.
Right. And so it allows a free flow of chi from the head to the body. You can do this on yourself just by massaging your own SCMs, like really like get in there and feel, particularly where the neck comes right here to meet the clavicle. There's a lot of tension for a lot of people right here. Women get more treatment on this area because we're washing our face in a delicate, right? And we're trying to not have aging. So we have a tendency to get a little bit more touch around here. But if you go to a massage therapist, one of the greatest things that you can do for yourself is make sure that you're getting touch around this entire area of your body. There's a lot of chi stagnation that exists around your neck and shoulder, particularly in the pec area, that can contribute to the feelings of stress-related pains where your shoulders are kind of always up in your ears. You might need to relax the front of your neck. If you have that neck pain, that back pain, hey, look, Acu-Dude is still here. If you have neck and shoulder pain that exists in this area of your body, you are probably having massive issues with this part of
exactly.
All right. Last question of the night, folks, because I do want to let Dr. Cyrus go. He's on the East Coast, so it's late for him. Any comments on HIT medicine a la Bob Flaws? Again, Bob Flaws is that 5 elemental region of things, and not everybody studies Bob Flaws. Do you have any commentary on Bob Flaws or HIT medicine?
Well, HIT medicine, you know, there's a bunch of herbal constituents that you can think about if you're treating like internal injuries. That's how I tend to look at it. And like I said, that came out of the Shaolin tradition. So there are different formulas of Dit Da Jiao and other liniments that you can put together. But as far as Bob Flaws is concerned, I don't know much about him. Who's that?
Right,
I'm just kidding. I mean, I know who he is. But I'm not terribly familiar with his work. But he does have some HIT medicine formulas that he's put out there.
A great book, I think it's called A Tooth from a Tiger's Mouth, or
yes, something like that.
A Tooth from a Tiger's Mouth, or something to that effect. Man, I want to look real fast before we get off to make sure that I'm not lying to you. I think it's called A Tooth from the Tiger's Mouth. If you want to study how to make liniments and formulas, about how to make things for injuries externally, then A Tooth from a Tiger's Mouth is a great book to begin that exploration. All right, Facebook land. I know we started a little bit late, y'all. I'm super, super sorry. I'm going to check the calendar real fast. Next week, I think we have novella. I lied. It isn't a dude next week. It's novella. We have dudes running, though, from the 1st of November, the 8th, and I think the 15th. We got a couple of people all lined up for you. I'm trying to keep it going to the end of the year, and I'm gonna take a break in there somewhere. Whoo, Lord, right? So, man, I get tired. Like, you know, you got to stop your whole day in the middle of Sunday, and it's just like, man, I'm supposed to be cooking, right? All right. So thank you, Dr. Cyrus, for coming in and speaking to us about Buddhism and how it relates to medicine and how it relates to our medicine here with acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. There was a comment that says, this has been the best Dharma healing presentation yet. Yes, thank you so very much, Yao. Thank you for a moment of your time. Thank you so much for your presentation. So y'all already, make sure you check out blackacupuncturist.com. We do have our melanin collection ear seeds in. We have our colors here for Dr. Cyrus. We have for the little more of the caramel collection folks, and we have some for our cafe au lait. And this is, yes, darker. It doesn't look like it with my bad lighting, but this is darker than the traditional ones. Let's see, do I have one here? I don't think you can see. You can see, this is significantly darker than your traditional ear seeds, right? So that we can begin to spread the beauty and joy of this melanin, the beauty and the joy of this medicine to our melanated people. The boxes are going to go on sale at blackacupuncturist.com. Remember the hashtag press, don't stress, press, right? And also be on the lookout at everyone's place. Currently, I am taking orders for star cupping. I gotta get somebody to come up here and talk about cupping one day. You know, maybe I'll do that by myself one day. Who knows how that goes? All right, Facebook land, you guys have been marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Cyrus, if you can just hold on for a minute, I'm gonna cut off Facebook and I'm gonna cut off the recording one at a time. Y'all have a beautiful and blessed night. All right, we're gonna.
Thank you for